Hello and welcome to the March USDA Planting Forecast Pre-Report webinar. My name is Peter Kemp and I'm an attorney with Progressive Ag Law. Joining me is my fellow attorney and president of Progressive Ag Law, as well as lead analyst and president of Progressive Ag Marketing, Ray Grabansky. Ray, we are preparing for the March planting report, which is going to be coming out March 31st. What do you foresee in this report and what should farmers do to prepare for that?
Well, it's a big report because, first of all, this is the first look at 2016, and it's good because we want to put 2017 in our rearview mirror because we have very low prices and we have big projected losses for farmers. So it's good that we're focusing on 2016. So starting out with a 15% loss in almost every commodity projected for 16, we're projecting acreage to drop of all crops. And we have a pre-guess estimate both by USDA and by the private trade estimate. So maybe we'll go right to some of our graphics.
That sounds good.
And in corn, the USDA outlook, which came out in February in corn, was projecting a 90 million planted acre number for corn. That would be a 2 million acre increase from last year. Now the trade estimate is 89.97, almost exactly the same as USDA. USDA is using not a survey, though, in those projections in February, but using price relationships and projections, economic models based on those price relationships. But when we get the survey as of March 1st, it might be a little different. My guess is that those numbers might be, maybe they will come in close to 90. Right where USDA was projecting, which would be a 2 million acre increase. But I think the number we get on March 31st will be the highest acreage number of the year. Because by the time farmers plant corn, they've started in Texas already, I think 38% planted, but by the time they plant most of the corn, it'll be the last half of April. And by then, they'll have another month of March and part of April that they're absorbing the fact that prices haven't moved and that they're still looking at a 15% loss. So I think that acreage will dwindle. And for soybeans, which is planted later, the trade is expecting an 83.1 million acre number, just a little 400,000 acres more than last year, whereas USDA's Ag Outlook is at 200,000 cut in acres. I think it's going to be close to last year's number, but again, the March report, I think those numbers will dwindle by the time we get in June the actual planted acreage. So, and the reason is because they're going to be looking at those projected 15% losses a few more months. And then it'll soak in that, yeah, we're still looking at a 15% loss at planting. Now we've been through March and April and half of May now for planting soybeans, and they'll plant it in May for the most part on an early crop year. So I think those numbers will shrink by the time we get to June, but these estimates are probably that would be my best guess of where those numbers might come in tomorrow. We got wheat. Actually, the winter wheat planted acres was 3.5 million less than last year. So USDA's Ag Outlook number was 51 million acres versus 54.6 last year, so a 3.6 million cut, because we already know what the winter wheat acreage was. So the trade estimate is 51.7, 700,000 more. I don't know why they think spring wheat growers are going to plant more acres, which is our last graphic, but they think for some reason spring wheat acres are going to go up 250,000 acres. I really doubt that. So we've got 1.5 million acres overall because the wheat dropped so much. Corn goes up 2 million, soybean about the same. Wheat goes down 3.5. We have 1.5 million less planted acres of the three major crops because prices are low. You can't make money planting it. Let's put some of it back into pasture, hayland, non-cropped areas. And the old saying was low prices cure low prices. We have low prices. Essentially a 15% projected loss in wheat, corn, and soybeans. And that is disincentive to plant. And I think we're going to plant less. And not only that, we will probably spend less producing this crop. A little less costly seed maybe, a little less nitrogen and phosphate fertilizer, Maybe we won't be spraying it as many times, you know. The economics, you know, change a little bit, but worldwide we'll probably spend less money on this crop. And low prices will cure low prices.
Yeah, so
eventually.
with lower or fewer inputs, less planted acres, total production will probably decrease in 2016 as compared to previous years, and hopefully that will raise up prices a little bit.
And the other thing is, you know, there's also a demand side of the equation. So, you know, we're talking only about the supply side when we talk about acres planted and how much production we get. The demand side, when prices are really low, the users of grain can buy it. You know, feed is less costly. Maybe we'll use a little more corn in the ration, less hay and other type things, silage. So, you know, the use might go up. We might use a little more ethanol because corn is cheap, although crude oil prices are cheap too. But they went down to 28 this winter, and they're closer to 40 now. So the movement is in the right direction there too.
Yeah, yeah. It's good to see that farmers have a little bit more optimistic picture, hopefully with decreased production, and hopefully that will bring up prices. But in light of these projected losses, maybe it'd be good now to turn to some issues that are affecting a lot of farmers in North Dakota, South Dakota, and really nationwide, and that's the ARCO payments, which were made last October. And a number of farmers have brought to attention to Progressive Ag Law some problems with the ARCO payments. And in previous webinars, we've discussed a lot about the facts causing those problems, about how NAS data or RMA data was used to establish both the baseline for the program year, or for the baseline for the guaranteed revenue, and also for the program year. And that has led to some very disparate payments in counties with very similar agricultural conditions. That has led us to believe that there could be some mistakes in the way that this ARC program was implemented. Ray, do you want to talk a little bit about the strategy now, about how we're going to go about trying to correct these mistakes and kind of our next steps? Sure.
And maybe it'd be good to explain. The ARCO payments last year amounted to $4.5 billion. About 60% of it was corn, about 35% was wheat, and all the other crops was maybe 5%. Most farmers had a choice between ARCO and PLC. Corn and soybean guys almost all chose ARCO, but there weren't any payments in soybeans to speak of. And for wheat, though, farmers some chose PLC if they were more bearish in their price outlook for the 5 years of the program. Maybe 40 to 60% in each state chose PLC, and 40 to 60% chose ARCO. It depended on the state. So you really have an issue that affects both wheat and corn. But let's talk exclusively about corn. We seem to have a little more information on it. In North Dakota, and we've discovered there are two potential problems. Number one, RMA, if they didn't have a NAS yield established, they assigned an RMA yield. The so-called RMA yield. It was an RMA much too high yield, would be another descriptor of it. We've discovered in Logan County, for example, in North Dakota, we believe it's 18% too high. The full payment comes in the first 10% loss. So they went from a zero payment, and they should have gotten around $50 an acre. And that is very, very bad. You know, if you happen to live in Logan County and a county next door got paid $50 or $60 an acre, that's a $50 acre disadvantage, you know, and that's a big problem.
It's a big problem.
Big problem. So you've got the problem with RMA yields assigned, and so-called RMA yields. Let's recall it RMA way too high yields. And I don't even think RMA likes using their name on there once people discover how bad those yields are. The second problem is NAS yields. We're finding, you know, some people think NAS yields are the gold standard. I thought NAS yields were pretty good because in the marketing field, we have NAS estimating yields nationally each month, September, October, November, January. And NAS is quite good at a national yield. They're also, I'm sure it's within 0.1 bushels nationally. They're also quite good, I think, on state yields. They're very close to what the actual state yield was. The problem I think statisticians have is now trying to get it down to a county yield. And in some counties, we don't have a lot of acres. So it gets very difficult to take those state yields. And after the January final report on national average yields, now they have to take it from the state yield down to the county yield. They do it by about March or April. And they do a pretty good job, but we're finding that, 1 year out of every 5 or 10, especially on those remote counties that don't have a lot of acres, the number is off compared to the crop insurance data, which we think is very reliable on buy-up policies. It's off as much as like 35 bushel 1 year in Logan County. That's about 40% off. Sometimes it's low, sometimes it's high. So it's not like RMA, which is always high. So if you get assigned an RMA yield, in my opinion, there's a 95% chance, maybe give or take 5 or 10%, that you got less than you were entitled to. Maybe a lot less, maybe no payment when you should have got the maximum. But when you get a NAS yield, sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. They actually are shooting in the middle. There might be a 50% chance if you got a NAS yield that it's off significantly. And that 14-year is the one that matters the most because that's the one all your payments are paid on. The base, you can be off one of those 5 years, and if it's the high or low, that's thrown out anyway. If it's the one of the other 3 yields, one is high, one is low, the average is okay. But you see that 14-year yield, if that one is 10% too high, you just went from a $60 an acre payment to nothing. And we're finding that NAS gold standard is not necessarily that good, especially in remote counties. So that becomes a problem. Even, for example, in South Dakota, I think we've got a map here. And so in South Dakota, the counties that we think where they got assigned an RMA yield, which is almost always way too high, is Coddington, Davison, Dewey. Dewey and Pennington are kind of in the central western part of the state where not much corn is planted, and Aurora County. Those 5 counties probably all got much less than they were entitled to. Some of them got about half a payment. The NAS counties that were not assigned an RMA yield, there's a lot more. But there's maybe only a 50% chance. Maybe some of them were right. Some of them might be even high, but there's probably 50% of them that were low. Maybe it's all of them, maybe it's none of them, but we have to get data to figure that out for sure. So crop insurance data might be the best.
Yeah.
So, those counties are Clark, Grant, Hamlin, Kingsbury, Minor, Hutchinson, Yankton, and Clay, and Bonhomie in the eastern part of South Dakota. In the central part, there's Spink, Hand, Hyde, Falk, Edmonds, and Potter counties. 15 counties. Maybe 7 or 8 of them got shorted some of their payment. They did not get a maximum payment. Some of them got 0. So is the NAS yield way too high in those counties that got 0? Actually, we don't even know. We need to get data to know. Maybe if there's 4 counties that got 0, maybe 2 of them, the yield was way too high in NAS. They should have got a maximum payment. Maybe in the other 2, the yield was right. Which 2? I don't know. I need the data. And I know farmers have that data because almost all of them buy crop insurance. And it's all there in their crop insurance records. If we just can get access to that as attorneys, we can keep it private. As you know, we've talked about. Maybe you want to explain how that works?
Yeah, so right now, as we've been brainstorming, how are we going to go about finding a solution for this problem? One of the ways that we're going to go about that is by lobbying the congressmen and women and the USDA officials to make changes at the administrative level to the program. We don't want to reopen the Farm Bill. We simply want there to be administrative changes to how the yield is determined in these counties that receive low payments. So we are signing up farmers for a pro bono lobbying contract. That's a free lobbying contract. We won't be charging attorney's fees for it. And then the farmers can give us their crop insurance data, or they can sign a release and we can go get that data from the crop insurance agents. And we can then compile that data, anonymize it, protect it with the attorney-client privilege, and present that data that's been anonymized and is the actual data that they submit for crop insurance. It's auditable, it's buy-up data. We can take that to Senators Hoeven and Heitkamp in North Dakota, as well as our entire congressional
South Dakota, yeah.
congressional delegation of all states that have affected counties, and we can say this is the actual yield data in these counties which were affected, and then they can put political pressure on the USDA and on the FSA, and we can present this data to the USDA and FSA, because I think everybody who realizes there's a problem wants to fix it. And the way that we can really be compelling in our argument that this is a real problem that needs a real solution is by presenting real data. And that real data will both show the problem and show a possible solution.
Yeah, good numbers for the county yield. Not RMA pie in the sky yields, or you know, maybe we should just call it pie in the sky and drop the RMA acronym, because it's not actual crop insurance data, I think. And, or you know, not a NAS yield that they're having difficulty finding because they don't have access. They've got surveys, which you could say anything in the survey. There's no, if a farmer is surveyed, he doesn't have
there's no penalty of perjury.
no penalty of perjury. But in the crop insurance data on buy-up policies where they're being paid claims on it, I think those numbers are rock solid, because they get audited if it's a claim over 200,000. So yeah, we got a good program. Our county's a good program.
Yes, it is.
The corn growers did a good job promoting it, and we adopted it. We gave farmers the choice of ARCO or the PLC, which is just price-based, which there's no problem with. There's no legitimate claim on the price part or PLC. But the ARCO, because the yields assigned were bad, either RMA or NAS maybe, it needs to be fixed. And it's a simple fix. Just fix the yields. Just get a good, reliable yield. And, you know, actually, there are some counties, maybe farmers feel it's not even worth looking at. The numbers are pretty accurate. But in counties where it doesn't look right, where it looks like those yields are wrong, what's wrong with letting farmers get their crop insurance data, get solid, reliable data, let them, if they get 25% of those acres in a county, let them present it to USDA and say, this is what the yield should have been. NAS is off, RMA is off, whoever else was, it's off. Correct it, we proved it to you, repay it properly. Maybe that's a simple fix in that program. Farmers have 90 days, 120 days, 180 days, some number to appeal it. And, you know, not 30 days. It isn't enough. 90 days, 180 days to get the crop insurance data, appeal it, correct that bad number, and pay it properly. Not pay them too much, but not pay them way too little. You know,
Yeah.
Why can't we do that?
Yeah, and so we are lobbying the Congress and USDA and FSA to make some changes to the program so that farmers in these affected counties can get paid. And we're doing this in conjunction with our partners in the Syngenta litigation, Phipps Anderson Deacon, Lee Murphy law firm, O'Hanlon, McCullum, and Demarath, and the firms that we're pursuing the Syngenta claim with. And we'd like to talk also a little bit about the Syngenta claim.
Maybe before we do, Peter, we should remind people, you know, we're representing them in ARCO pro bono, and we're paying the costs. There's no link requirement. If someone wants us just to represent them in ARCO to get their farm program payment, we will do that, and it's pro bono. There's no link requirement that they have to sign up with us in Syngenta.
Yeah.
Let's make that clear.
Yeah.
And the second thing, you know, we are charging a standard attorney's fee of 40% of the settlement and paying all the expenses in Syngenta. And then we can also represent you in Syngenta, but there's no link between those two. You can do one, not the other. You can do Syngenta and not ARCO. You can do ARCO and not Syngenta. Or you can do both with us. It doesn't matter.
We'd be happy to represent you in either matter. And to help you make a decision about who you would like to represent you, if you would like an attorney to represent you in the Syngenta matter, please view the following video presented by Phipps Anderson Deacon describing the Syngenta claim and also their experience in litigating GMO market closure cases.
My name is Martin Phipps, and I am from the great big town of Breckenridge, Texas. I grew up in a town I like to tell people had 3 stoplights. Those values you bring from a small town, being honest, telling the truth, and standing up and believing in something, is something that we do here at our firm.
I'm Barry Deacon. I'm originally from Arkansas, grew up in a family law firm. Farming's been a big part of my professional life in representing farmers and agricultural related entities my entire practice.
You may ask, why hire Phipps, Anderson, and Deacon? The best answer I give you is because we are so proud to represent farmers that it's the most important thing when you walk into our building and see what we do.
Part of my background was being involved in representing a co-op of rice farmers against bare crop science in the rice litigation that began in 2006. With my background in the rice litigation, that's important because that was genetically modified rice that was being experimentally tested that contaminated the U.S. rice crops. That litigation is very, very similar to the Syngenta corn litigation where an unapproved trait was marketed to China.
What you're going to find out in this case is when Syngenta released Viptera to sell to you, they hadn't even applied to China for approval. Because of that, they took a risk, and that risk ended with you losing the China market. When you're choosing a lawyer to represent you in the Syngenta litigation, every lawyer is going to tell you that they're the best. We don't have to say anything to you. We just want you to look at our record. We are the lawyers who tried and won the rice case. We're the lawyers that developed the damage models. We're the lawyers that got the punitive damage verdicts. The rice case settled for $750 million. I'm very proud to tell you that my farmers, the people that I represented, got $50 million more than everybody else. We get asked every day, is this going to be a class action? And I want to make the answer real clear. We're not class action lawyers. We represent individual farmers against Syngenta and other big companies. And why do we do that? Because class actions don't help the clients. They only help the lawyers. Each one of you farm differently. Each one of your damages are different. So what we believe is we're going to represent you individually and not like some class action lawyer.
We are certainly not against the technology that Syngenta has come up with in producing their seed. We're actually for that technology because it's good for the American farmer. What we have a fault with is what Syngenta has done in marketing its corn. It's done it in an irresponsible way, and that has affected all of us.
I don't know about you, but we need more places to sell our corn, not less. And so all we're asking Syngenta to do is to stand up and do the right thing. The same thing you do every day when anybody comes to you with an issue. You may ask what makes us different at Phipps, Anderson, Deacon. The answer is simple, is we care. I've been on a combine and I know how hard it is to farm. And because I'm gonna make sure when I get done with this case and I come and sit in your living room, that you're proud that I'm your lawyer.
A lot of farmers have heard a little bit about this case and know the general storyline of what happened in Syngenta, but I thought just for kind of background informational and make sure that we're all on the same page, we might today give a little bit of the total story of the Syngenta lawsuit and how it's come about and where we're at right now. So Syngenta is a Swiss company. They were formed in the early 2000s, formed primarily to create new types of agricultural chemicals and agricultural seeds. And for all accounts, they're very good at this. They've created some really wonderful products that have been beneficial for farmers in the United States and worldwide, really. One of these products is a corn seed called Viptera corn. Viptera is a variety that's been developed. It contains a protein that when certain corn borers and other pests eat this protein, it prevents them from digesting the food and then prevents them from repopulating. And so fields with an infestation of corn borers or rootworms will have an improved yield. And we have no reason to doubt the efficacy of this seed. It seems like a perfectly fine GMO, and we have no problems with GMOs, which brings us to one of the first objections to this lawsuit, is that lawyers are bringing this out of anti-GMO animus, and that is not the case. We have no problems with GMOs. We think they're a very helpful technology, but what we would like to see is that when a new GMO reaches the market, it reaches so in a proper manner, because it does not matter how good a new GMO variety is, if it's sitting in the bin and not being sold on the market, it's not going to be beneficial for the U.S. farmer.
Essentially, responsible release of new GMO varieties. And in this case, it was not approved by China before 2010 when Syngenta released it. China was expected to become the most important importer of corn down the road, as projected by USDA. In 2013, they detected it in our corn supply, rejected all shipments, essentially, of U.S. corn. We lost the Chinese market. Ukraine and Russia have a good share, if not all of it now. And, ironically, we export 2/3 of the world's soybeans to China. But we export almost no corn to China because Viptera got approved, but they have a new variety, Duracade, that was released that still is not approved by China. We still are not in the Chinese market.
And Syngenta knew about the possibility of losing the Chinese market before commercialization and then after commercialization, but before China began rejecting U.S. corn. Syngenta had been warned of the possibility that having an unapproved GMO would cause the loss of the Chinese market. So the National Grain and Feed Association, the National Grain Exporters Association had each gone to Syngenta and said, please do not release this Viptera variety without approval by the Chinese market, or in the Chinese marketplace. Or at the very least, have certain requirements to keep it out of the general corn stream, the general export corn stream. Syngenta did not. Bunge in 2011 saw this risk, saw the possibility that China might begin rejecting U.S. corn, and Bunge didn't want to be responsible for that loss.
And actually, Syngenta sued Bunge to require them to take the corn in their elevators, and Bunge said, we don't want it because we know, we believe China will, China imports a lot of corn from us, and we believe China will not like it when they detect the corn. Not if, but when they detect the Viptera strain of corn in their imports, and they have a no tolerance policy, so it'll be rejected. And in that claim, which was settled in 2012, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In that claim, they said, in the court case, we do not want it because we foresee this problem developing where China rejects the corn. We don't want to be held responsible. Since you released the variety early and it got mixed into our corn supply, we think you should bear the responsibility. And so what does that say about, now remember torts class, one of the elements of a tort is you have to have foreseeability. So how, Peter, would you prove foreseeability now given the Bunge case?
Yeah, Syngenta had notice that this was a possible problem. And indeed, in shareholders, after the Bunge case settled, were asking Syngenta CEO, when is Viptera going to be approved in China? And in that shareholder call, the Syngenta CEO said, approval by China is imminent. Now, approval by China did come, but it wasn't in December 2012, it wasn't in January 2013, it was in December 2014. And in the meantime, China had, as we discussed earlier, discovered Viptera in its corn imports and begun rejecting essentially all U.S. corn shipments from the United States to China.
And now Duracade. Duracade is still not approved. That's a new variety released by Syngenta after Viptera. Same problem. It's not approved by China. There was a lot of bad, what I would call bad corporate behavior by Syngenta. Releasing it early, and then all those bits of facts, which you can find on a website called syngenta-lawsuit.com. Click on chronology. It's all laid out very well there. So maybe we don't need to talk about that anymore. But the fact is, a claim arose, and some people estimate, even 50 cents to $1 a bushel could be the multiple year payment for a producer. So if you're raising 100,000 bushels, if it's $1, that's $100,000. If you're raising 1 million bushels at $1, that's $1 million. At 50 cents a bushel settlement, that would be $500,000. Which brings us to another important point. So we talked about ARCO potentially being maybe we were 10% underpaid on a $4.5 billion payment on ARCO. So that's $450 million claim, maybe 400. Let's use 400 just as a guesstimate. If it's that, and Syngenta is a 50 cents a bushel claim on 13 billion bushels of production in the U.S. in corn. give or take $1 billion, depending on how good the yield is any year. So that might be a 6.5 billion claim versus 400 million. That's 15 times larger, 14, 15 times larger, the Syngenta claim corn farmers have versus the ARCO. Now, if you have an ARCO payment that you were underpaid, $20,000, it's possible, if you're the average farmer in America, your Syngenta claim is $300,000. So this Syngenta thing is a big deal, a really big deal for farmers. And it might be the largest mass ag tort in the history of agriculture. So it is a big, big deal.
We're pursuing these cases individually, so we're bringing a case on behalf of one farmer at a time, and we're pursuing the full amount of that farmer's damages, which include the market damages based upon the corn that farmer grew for a given crop year, and also the consequential damages, which essentially are how a farmer's operation changed as a result of the price of corn being 11 to 50 cents lower per bushel. These would be things like if you changed your crop rotation and you planted a crop that was less profitable than would have corn had corn been 50 cents an acre higher. Or perhaps you stored your grain longer, or perhaps you had to, in changing your crop rotation, spray more fungicide. And so we're going to be asking for these consequential damages as well as the market damages, and we're going to be doing so in state courts where farmers can be tried by a jury of their peers. We are optimistic about our team. We think we're being led by a very good and experienced attorney in Martin Phipps and Barry Deacon, who have experienced litigating the GMO rice market closure cases, which every
$750 million claim on 2.5 million acres of rice, almost $300 an acre.
Yeah.
And they have experience litigating it. They designed the damage model for it. The courts have accepted it in the U.S. They won about $50 million of their $750 million claim was consequential losses, or about 15%. In a class action, I understand it's very difficult to sue for consequential damages. And there will be a difference, probably between attorney groups.
Yeah, we've begun talking a little bit about settlement. So most of these cases, we bring mass torts, the idea isn't that we're going to litigate every single case. We want to litigate some cases to establish precedent for damage models. And if those cases are going favorably for us as plaintiffs' attorneys, we'll ask the defendant to settle. And in February, the end of February, a judge in Kansas City and in Minneapolis decided that they wanted to have a special master to play a mediator role in hopefully helping move forward settlement discussions. And that's one of the more recent developments in the case, is the appointment or the request to appoint a special master to oversee settlement discussions. Now, this doesn't mean that settlement is around the corner necessarily, but it is something that we're very interested to see how that plays out. Another interesting development in the course of this litigation and these facts is ChemChina's recent offer to purchase Syngenta. The irony is so thick that you can cut it with a knife that a Chinese company is offering to purchase Syngenta after these set of facts. But there's been lots of discussion about what might change because of that, and the short answer is nothing. When you buy a corporation, you buy it subject to its contingent liabilities. And so the fact that ChemChina may buy Syngenta in the future will not change the question of whether or not there's damages. That is past facts that we're suing upon. There have been some discussions, and it is quite common that when a company buys another company, they may want to settle outstanding liabilities, and they don't want to have this huge unknown. So ChemChina may want to settle sooner than Syngenta would.
If I were buying your company, Peter,
yeah.
and you had some accident and one of your trucks rolled over and somebody got hurt and there's a contingent liability there, before I bought your company, I would want that settled. Let's say I'm buying your company for $1 million. Is that claim a $50,000 claim, $150,000 claim, or $250,000? I would want to know, because the value of your company to me will change significantly. Now, Syngenta, they supposedly, the information released to the press anyway, they were offered $43 billion, something around that, from ChemChina. So that's a lot of value. That's good, because if they have a $3, $5, $6, $10 billion liability in the Syngenta case, at least they can afford to pay for it. That's good. And they're going to operate and continue to operate as a company, obviously, because their value is a lot higher than that. So that's good.
As you're moving towards spring planting and into the summer, we urge you to take a good hard look at the Syngenta case and decide whether or not you want to pursue your case and who you want, which attorney you would like to represent you. We would be happy, more than happy, to represent you in these matters, but we want you to be comfortable with your attorney. So please go to our website, progressiveaglaw.com or syngenta-lawsuit.com. Take a look at our team and make a decision. Before, we urge you just to take some time as you're watching this video and consider your options. If you have questions, please call the number on your screen or visit our website, progressiveaglaw.com, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching this video, and please enjoy your day. Thank you.